Hi. Um, this is kind of a hard video for me to post. Although I am usually very honest, I don't like being totally transparent in front of what could possibly be millions of people. But hey, it is what it is, and this is what I feel on my heart and my spirit this morning. I've been seeing a lot of disturbing posts on Facebook about, racism, particularly in Alabama. And without going into too many details, I've seen screenshots of people in Northport, in Tuscaloosa, that are totally racist. A very high degree of racism, if there is such a thing. Does racism come in degrees? I don't know. I think racism is just racism. But somehow it's also exposing me to some fears that I must have secretly had in my heart all this time and I didn't know. It's funny how I live in Alabama, but I've always felt the racial tension never hit me directly. So I've always kind of looked at it as, wow, kind of as a distant, a little far off from me. But somehow seeing it right here in Northport, which I know maybe I've just been naive, and I know a lot of you are watching this like, really, Nimi, really, you didn't know. But the degree of hatred in these posts is what is totally frightening. And the fact that that level of hatred still exists in people's hearts kind of frightened me a little. Not only for myself, but for my husband, my children, the rest of my family who happen, to be people of color. And it also has made me examine myself and kind of think about what are my thoughts towards people of different races. I think it's easy as African Americans, as Black people, or brown, or, whatever way you want to call it, to kind of only look at it from ourselves on the receiving end and not really examine ourselves to make sure we're not guilty of similar prejudices, whether they be in the same degree, a lesser degree, or the same degree. And it's kind of frightening when you decide to be introspective and you look at yourself in the light of everything happening. The climate wants to make me say this is not a great time to be Black, but then in the reality of it, when has it been a great time to be Black in America? Coming from Nigeria and living there for about 20 years, where this race is not an issue, it's more of a tribalistic issue there. And you have, religious tension. The race thing to me is a different animal, and it's something that I personally, thank God, have never experienced directly. No one's ever called me anything to my face or anything like that. And I think that's just the grace of God, because I have no idea how I would react. But the roots of racism in Alabama, in America as a whole, but particularly in the South, are much deeper than I even anticipated or that I even thought. Some of these posts that kids in the University of Alabama are posting, telling people, why did you come down here from New York? Why did you come to a school in the South? Pretty much insinuating that you know how we roll down here. That bothers me a lot. Coming from where we came from in this, part of the country, considering the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King Jr. and all the people who struggled so much for equal rights and for Black people to be looked at as human beings. After all that, you've got people younger than me. I mean, I'm going to be 40 in January. We're talking about younger generation, university kids, with this level of hatred, this degree of hatred that has just been inbred into them. I mean, from their families. You had to be raised that way. I don't believe people are born being racist. I think it's a learned behavior. And my children, or you take my daughter, for instance, it's only recently that she started identifying people by color. I would ask her, what teacher are you talking about? She would say the Black one. And I don't even know where she learned that from. But it just goes to show you how, children learn these things as they grow up. What are we teaching our kids? These kids in the University of Alabama, what are they teaching them? And really, let's be objective from the black side as well. What are we teaching our kids? As they're growing up, are we teaching them to be afraid of white people? Are we teaching them, which, to be honest, I wouldn't blame you. It's not right, but I could see why you would do that. But to raise a child up in fear for any reason is always a bad idea. And my concern is, how does this get better? And there's only one way for it to get better. And it's going to sound cliche, and everybody's going to be like, oh, when you start talking about this, you're ignoring the racial divide. And the truth of the matter is, if you have a tree, a huge, huge tree that maybe has been alive for hundreds of years, and its roots have gone deep, deep, deep into the ground, deep into the earth, the process of uprooting it is a long, arduous process. It takes a while for you to get all the roots out. And you're going to keep pulling, and the more roots that you pull up, the more branches each root is going to have, because it's so deeply embedded into the ground. And as we pull up those roots of racism in Alabama and in this country and in the South, it's going to expose us to a lot of things, which I believe is what's happening right now. It's going to keep pulling up different things, different attitudes on all sides. And my concern is, once those roots are pulled out of the ground, what are you left with? You're left with a gigantic gaping hole in the ground. And if we don't fill that up with something else, possibly even worse, will take root. And the only thing that can fill up that empty space is the love of God. And I know you knew I was going there, but that's the only thing that can replace it. That's the only thing that can heal the land. We've got to come together. We've got to come together and pray so that God can heal our land. As these roots are being exposed and being pulled up, there's a lot of healing. It's like ripping open an old sore that you've covered up and you didn't heal. All that yucky stuff has got to come out, and it's got to be treated. That's what's happening now. All the praying that has been done in Alabama, in churches all over the state, country, churches, black churches, white churches, interracial churches, mixed churches, all the churches. I believe that the sincere churches are rising up and praying. And this is why we're seeing a lot of this stuff being exposed. With the political climate right now, getting ready for these elections, where the elections seem to be rooted on the principle of voting for the lesser of two evils. Evil is evil. I'm not even going to go into that. That'll probably be a separate video on my feelings about this whole election thing. But as far as the racial divide goes, the only way that we can repair it, this stuff has got to be uprooted, and we've got to fill it with the love of God. We as Christians, black Christians, white Christians, Hispanic Christians, whatever your race, we've got to learn to love people who are different from ourselves. We cannot continue to click up according to our race, according to our likes. We've got to branch out. You've got to ask yourself, look at yourself and ask you. Like I ask myself all the time, how many white friends do I have? And I'm not saying you got to be friends with all the white people in the world. But what are your reasons for not reaching out? Do you ever have the opportunities to make friends with someone of a different race and then you decide not to? Okay, then what were your reasons for that? All I'm saying is we've got to start examining ourselves honestly to try to see what the real problems are with. Okay, take me for instance. I work in a call center right now, and without going into too many details, when I speak to certain people of certain races, my attitude totally changes, and I don't even notice it. Like, I don't notice it till I'm off of the call. Subconsciously, I start speaking to you differently because you had a particular type of name that indicated that you were from a particular race, and it prepared me for the way I was going to talk to you. And all these stereotypes that we have deep-rooted in ourselves, we need to start examining ourselves. We're not going to be able to love people until we start uprooting whatever small amounts of racism are in our own hearts. And it doesn't matter what color you are. There are stereotypes in your mind that either the media has fed you, your parents have taught you without you knowing. You might not think that there is a problem, but I strongly, strongly encourage you. Take a look deeper inside and just ask yourself. Because if we all did that, If we all kind of took a look at ourselves and tried to, understand what our own personal prejudices were, we wouldn't be having all these problems on the university. We wouldn't be having this. People would open up and start trying to understand, what is the Black experience? What does it mean when Black people say Black Lives Matter? Why are you guys even talking about this at all? There's nothing wrong with asking that. It's encouraged for you to ask questions and get to know Black people, get to know white people. Don't listen to all the stereotypes that white people are a certain way and this is how white people behave, so I don't want to talk to them about those things. No. Let's start giving other races the benefit of the doubt. And if it's rooted in the love of God, we can't go wrong. And those are just some of my thoughts on this. It was just, it's burdening me a lot. I was praying and I just said, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't do videos on Facebook. Everybody knows that I usually just read people's posts on Facebook. I hope this blessed somebody. If you want to unfriend me after this, it's totally fine. I'm just being honest and just speaking the truth in love. We've got to start examining ourselves. We've got to do something. We can't just sit here and just keep our fingers crossed and hope things change. We've got a very pivotal election coming up. And that is for another video. God bless you.